To dismantle an opponent's defense, you must first eliminate their fear. When you fight every battle with open resistance, you keep your opposition alert, paranoid, and prepared. But when you strategically concede, their ego takes over. Overconfidence becomes their blind spot. Strategic submission is not defeat, it is the ultimate Trojan horse. In this masterclass, learn how master strategists feign weakness, let the opponent overextend, and execute a decisive countertrap when their guard is at absolute zero. Direct resistance triggers an immediate defensive reflex in human psychology. When you fight back on every point, your opponent treats the interaction as a zero-sum war, remaining vigilant and guarded. The Trojan concession is the deliberate act of surrendering minor, non-essential ground to satisfy the opponent's need for victory. By yielding on low-stakes demands or agreeing with minor criticisms, you deliver a false sense of triumph directly to their ego. Their analytical guard drops immediately because they believe their dominance has been established. They stop looking for hidden traps or secondary maneuvers because they assume you are operating from a state of compromise. This strategic yield allows you to bypass their defensive perimeter entirely, placing your true assets and long-term objectives safely out of sight while they celebrate a superficial victory. When people believe they have absolute leverage over an opponent, their caution rapidly diminishes and their ambition expands unnaturally. Ego-inflated overextension is the calculated tactic of appearing hesitant, overwhelmed, or outmatched to encourage an aggressive opponent to push too far. By acting as though their pressure is working, you lure them into making increasingly greedy demands and overcommitting their resources. In their rush to secure a total rout, they abandon standard risk management protocols, expose sensitive information, and step far outside their defensible territory. You are not being pushed back. You are drawing them deeper into an engineered corridor. By allowing their ego to drive their momentum, you ensure that when the trap springs, their own overcommitted force accelerates their strategic collapse. Superiority in negotiation does not come from displaying maximum power. It comes from controlling information asymmetry. The false power baseline involves deliberately letting your opponent miscalculate your capacity, reserves, or alternatives. If an opponent believes you have no secondary options, they will operate with reckless arrogance, assuming you must accept whatever terms they dictate. By quietly feeding this misconception, you allow them to build an entire strategy around a fundamentally flawed premise. They lock themselves into rigid positions based on the belief that you cannot counter. When you eventually reveal your actual leverage, their entire strategic architecture becomes useless instantly. By letting them fight a phantom version of your capability, you ensure their calculations are wrong before the real confrontation even begins. Arrogance is remarkably talkative. When an opponent believes they have forced you into submission, their need for secrecy vanishes, replaced by the desire to gloat, validate their intelligence, or explain how they cornered you. Information extraction via vulnerability is the practice of adopting a posture of helpless retreat to prompt the adversary into revealing their true motives, hidden partners, or ultimate operational goals. By asking naive questions or appearing confused by their leverage, you invite them to explain their strategy in detail. Seeking to reinforce their superior status, the opponent naturally overshares critical details they would normally guard with extreme paranoia. You absorb this valuable intelligence in total silence, using their voluntary disclosures to map out the exact blueprint required to dismantle their position. The timing of a counter-move determines its lethality. Striking too early alerts the opponent while their defenses are still active. Striking too late allows their temporary advantage to solidify into permanent control. The sudden pivot or spring trap is executed at the precise moment the opponent reaches peak overconfidence, typically right as they attempt to finalize their engineered victory. having allowed them to overextend, expose their motives, and drop their defensive perimeter, you instantly shift from passive concession to absolute clinical authority. You introduce a single, unanswerable counterfact, a hidden legal leverage point, or an unassailable alternative that completely neutralizes their position. Because their psychological state was primed for triumph rather than conflict, the sudden reversal causes severe cognitive paralysis. They have no contingency plan for an attack originating from a position they deemed defeated. Before their analytical system can recover from the shock, you execute your primary objective and close the interaction on your precise terms. Amateurs fight for public validation, applause, and the satisfaction of winning the argument. Master strategists care exclusively for operational yield, the tangible assets, decisions, and structural outcomes that dictate real power. Asymmetric victory is the ultimate manifestation of strategic submission. You structure the final resolution so that your opponent leaves the table feeling like the victor, while you retain 100% of the actual value. You allow them to claim credit for the idea, boast about their negotiation skills to third parties, or dictate the visual presentation of the deal. Meanwhile, the legal contracts, resource allocations, and long-term strategic control reside firmly in your hands. This asymmetry ensures that the opponent has zero incentive to challenge or undo the agreement later, as doing so would destroy their own prized narrative of dominance. By severing your ego from your operational goals, you eliminate unnecessary friction and secure permanent strategic territory. You let them hold the trophy while you quietly walk away with the prize.